Caesar thought he was untouchable, until 23 knives proved him wrong. The Ides of March, 44 BC, would become one of the most infamous dates in human history. Julius Caesar, the man who conquered Gaul, brought down the Roman Republic's enemies, and declared himself dictator for life, walked into the Senate house, and never walked out again. But what led to this brutal end? And did Caesar know death was stalking him in his final days? In 44 BC, Caesar accepted the title Dictator Perpetuo, dictator for life. This was no temporary emergency role. It was a crown in all but name. To many Romans, this was the final nail in the Republic's coffin. Senators whispered in dark corners. Some feared Caesar would soon declare himself king, a title Romans hated since expelling their last monarch 5 centuries earlier. The Senate had sworn to protect the Republic, but now they faced a man who was dismantling it from within. Legend tells us Caesar was warned. A soothsayer is said to have told him, "Beware the Ides of March." On March 15th, Caesar brushed it off with arrogance. Even when bad omens piled up, sacrificial animals showing no heart, his wife Calpurnia dreaming of his murder, Caesar ignored them. On the morning of his death, Calpurnia even begged him not to attend the Senate. For a moment, he considered staying home. But fate and flattery intervened. Conspirators convinced him he was safe. That decision would cost him his life. Behind closed doors, more than 60 senators conspired against him. At their center, Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus. Cassius hated Caesar's power. Brutus, however, was different. He was like a son to Caesar. Rumors even whispered he was Caesar's illegitimate child. To stab Caesar, Brutus had to stab his own honor, his loyalty, and perhaps even his conscience. Yet he joined the plot. To the assassins, his name gave legitimacy. If even Brutus opposed Caesar, surely the people would too. On the morning of the Ides of March, Caesar walked through Rome toward the theater of Pompey, where the Senate was meeting. The streets were restless. Murmurs of discontent filled the air. Some accounts claim he received a written warning, naming the conspirators and the plot, pressed into his hand by a supporter. But Caesar never read it. He tucked it away, still believing he was untouchable. As Caesar took his seat in the Senate, the conspirators crowded around him. At first, it seemed routine, senators presenting petitions, asking favors. Then, a man grabbed his toga, yanking it down. The first knife struck. History tells us it was Casca who plunged the blade into Caesar's neck. Caesar twisted in shock, crying out, "Casca, you villain, what are you doing?" Chaos erupted. More blades flashed. Caesar struggled, fighting back at first, but the senators pressed in from all sides. The most powerful man in the world, cornered like an animal. Blow after blow rained down, 23 in total. But it wasn't the number that broke Caesar. It was the faces. He saw allies, supposed friends, men whose careers he had made, all stabbing him. And then, the final betrayal, Brutus. When Caesar saw him raise his dagger, ancient historians say he uttered words that still echo. "Et tu, brute?" Whether he truly spoke them or not, the meaning is clear. When even Brutus turned, Caesar's will to fight ended. He pulled his toga over his head and collapsed at the foot of Pompey's statue, the man he had once defeated. His blood pooled beneath the very symbol of Rome's fallen republic. Caesar's assassination shook the Roman world, but it didn't save the republic. In fact, it unleashed chaos far worse than anything the conspirators imagined. Civil war, bloodshed, and the rise of an even deadlier ruler, Caesar's heir, Octavian, better known as Augustus. But before we uncover the aftermath, one question lingers. Did Julius Caesar know his death was coming? And if so, why did he walk willingly into the knives of his enemies? That's where our story continues. On the floor of the Senate house, Julius Caesar lay lifeless. The conspirators expected cheers from the people, a rush of gratitude for saving the Republic. But silence filled the streets. The citizens of Rome were horrified, not at Caesar's power, but at the sight of their beloved leader slaughtered like an animal. The assassins believed they were liberators. Instead, they became butchers in the eyes of the people. As word spread, shops closed, doors slammed shut, and Rome trembled in fear. Caesar was gone, but his shadow loomed larger than ever. Just days later, Caesar's funeral turned into one of the most explosive events in Roman history. His body was carried into the Forum, laid out for all to see. Mark Antony, his loyal ally, stepped forward. With fire in his voice, Antony spoke not as a politician, but as a grieving friend. He lifted Caesar's torn and bloodied toga, showing the wounds, naming the senators who had inflicted them. The crowd gasped as each dagger strike was revealed. Then Antony read Caesar's will. To everyone's shock, Caesar had left money and land for the Roman people. Even in death, he had given them more than the Senate ever had. The conspirators fled, but they could not outrun what they had created. Riots swept through Rome. Caesar's supporters hunted the assassins like prey. Statues of Brutus and Cassius were torn down, their names cursed in the streets. Brutus and Cassius escaped the city, gathering armies in the east. But their cause was doomed. Caesar's death had not killed his legacy, it had immortalized it. His name became a rallying cry, not a warning. Rome was no longer asking, "How do we save the Republic?" Instead, it was asking, "Who will avenge Caesar?" Into this chaos stepped a new figure, Gaius Octavius, Caesar's adopted heir, just 18 years old. Few took him seriously at first. He was young, inexperienced, fragile in appearance. But Octavian carried the one weapon that mattered, Caesar's name. He styled himself Caesar's son, and with that, he gained instant loyalty from Caesar's veterans and supporters. Together with Mark Antony and Lepidus, Octavian formed the Second Triumvirate. Their mission? To hunt down every last conspirator. Lists of enemies were drawn up. Rome drowned in blood once again. Brutus and Cassius, the so-called liberators, met their end 2 years later at the Battle of Philippi. Their armies were crushed. Facing defeat, both men chose suicide over capture. Brutus fell on his sword, ending his life with the same steel he had once driven into Caesar. Cassius, misled into thinking all was lost, ordered a servant to kill him. The irony was complete. The men who killed Caesar in the name of freedom had destroyed themselves, and the republic they swore to protect. Out of their ashes, a monarchy disguised as an empire began to rise. But the greatest mystery lingers. Did Caesar know his death was coming? The omens were undeniable. The soothsayer's warning, Calpurnia's dream, the sacrificial signs. Even the note naming the conspirators was in his hand that morning, unopened. Was it arrogance? Did Caesar believe himself too powerful to fall? Or, perhaps, did he accept his fate? Ancient sources suggest that when he saw Brutus among the attackers, he stopped resisting. Some even claim he pulled his toga over his head, choosing dignity in death over a futile struggle. It is possible that Caesar, master of politics and drama, understood the power of a martyr's death. In falling, he guaranteed that his legacy would outlive all who betrayed him. In the years that followed, Caesar's spirit seemed to haunt Rome. His adopted son Octavian crushed his enemies, claimed the title Augustus, and became the first emperor of Rome. The republic the conspirators tried to save never returned. Instead, their daggers paved the way for centuries of imperial rule. And Caesar? His name became eternal. Caesar, Kaiser, Czar, all echoes of the man stabbed 23 times on a March morning. Julius Caesar's final days remind us that power is never secure, and betrayal often comes from those closest to us. He walked into the Senate as the most powerful man alive, and left only as a legend written in blood. But the question remains, was Caesar blind to the danger, or did he choose to embrace it, knowing that death would make him immortal? That's the mystery of the Ides of March.